The Fuji X100 series is a really attractive, stylish, quite fun to use little camera. I've had this one now for a couple of months. The main limitation of this little camera though is the limited 23mm lens that gives us a 35mm equivalent. But Fujifilm does have a teleconverter adapter that gives us a 50mm equivalent. I picked this up recently and so far it has been pretty nice to use. So today I'd like to give you my thoughts on this lens adapter in 3 parts. First is going to be some overall image comparisons. The second is going to be the actual faff of using this lens and does it actually get in the way or improve your photography. And the third is going to be the value of this setup with the teleconverter and the Fuji X100S in this case versus other offerings from Fuji. Let's get straight into it with some image comparisons. So while I'm talking now, I'm just going to show some of the shots that I took on the Fuji X100S while I was in Italy. Some of the shots will be using the built-in 23mm lens and then some with the TCL teleconversion lens. I will label the images respectively. There's only 2 or 3 shots that I actually did the same shot twice on both different lenses. I have not cropped these images in any way. All I have done is apply the Astia color space to the raw file. In terms of crop, we're predictably seeing a 15mm focal length increase when we attach the teleconversion lens. Looking at these image comparisons, the thing that I think a lot of people will be interested in is whether or not this teleconversion lens just provides an additional zoom or whether it actually does compress the image further as you would expect out of a longer focal length lens. So say if we had a 35mm prime lens versus a 50mm prime lens, there would be a significant amount more of compression between those 2 focal lengths. But when we actually add the teleconverter lens, there is the tiniest bit of compression that I can see, but it's really not an awful lot. Between these 2 shots in particular, one of a plant and then another of the Cinque Terre, like Manarola buildings, you can see there's a tiny bit of compression in terms of distance, but it's not the same thing you'd expect from a 50mm lens. In terms of the color that's coming out of the images, I think there is no difference between having the teleconverter lens on or off. Luckily, this is built by Fuji and it would not be approved by Fuji if they thought it was going to have any negative impact on the final images produced by their own camera. Next, onto the faff. Before we get into the overall faff of using this teleconverter lens, I'd like to remind you to like this video so that other Fuji wannabe shooters or Fuji shooters can check out this video and find out more about this cool little combo and see if it's worth it for them. Anyway, into the faff. Faff in British English is defined as optional yet subjectively necessary bother or hassle. In this situation, adding this teleconversion lens to your Fuji X100 series camera does add a little bit of faff. So let's get into it. The main part of the faff, in my opinion, is having to carry around an additional piece of glass with you if you want to be able to swap between the 2 lens setups. I particularly enjoy using the X100 as I would used to use my old Minolta SLR, where I was just sort of have it on a strap around my back, not really think about it too much, bring it up when I want to take a couple of shots and then put it away. I don't want to be carrying around additional stuff or a bag if I don't need to. But if you're going to be bringing the teleconversion lens along with you as an optional extra, you might need a bag, you're either going to need a big pocket to keep it in all day. It's just something to think about. But you could just have the conversion lens attached for the full day and you just commit to using it. One thing I really enjoy about the X100S is having the lens hood adapter that I think is actually really nice and keeps the lens nicely protected from most things that aren't a pointy object. I will happily just walk around with the lens like this all day and not actually cover the glass itself. If you were to walk around with the teleconversion lens on all day, you are going to need to put the lens cap back on because it's a chunky bit of glass. When it comes to actually attaching and detaching the lens, with the X100S, that lens hood I mentioned clips onto a very thin little thread mount, and we can actually unscrew that whole thread mount mechanism and then replace it with the teleconversion lens. But that does mean that you are then left with the lens hood and the little thread mount to put away somewhere else in the meantime. When actually keeping the camera on your body in both different configurations, I find it actually doesn't make an awful lot of difference in terms of weight or comfort having the teleconverter lens on, but there is that element of the lens cap could fall off and then you might bang the glass element, which is one thing in and of itself. maybe I just think I'm clumsy, but if you actually just have the original lens on with the lens hood, I feel like I trust having this hanging down by the side of my body much more than I trust having the extended lens adapter. The lens also does increase the overall footprint of the camera, which, you know, is either good or bad depending on your aesthetic preference, and as I've heard many people online say before, it does give it a slightly Leica-esque appeal. Lastly, I'd like to get into the value of this setup and how does it compare with having a different Fuji setup with multiple prime lenses. As a quick comparison to another Fuji camera, I'm going to compare the X100S to the Fuji X-T20. Both share a very similar image quality and similar film simulations, and overall, you know, tend to be used by a similar niche of photographer. When buying the Fuji X100S used today, it goes for around £400, and then the Teleconverter Lens goes for about £150. The Fuji X-T20 in this case, without a lens, also goes for about £400. And then if we wanted to add a similar lens setup of a 23mm plus a 35mm, those are going to add £350 and £325 respectively. And that comes to a total of £1,000 for the X-T20 versus a total of £550 for the X100S plus the Teleconverter Lens. Among Fuji's offerings, these are two different category of camera. They are both mirrorless, but the X-T20 is an interchangeable lens camera, while the X100 is a fixed lens point and shoot. But I would not recommend going for the Teleconverter Lens if you think that it's going to start replacing having an interchangeable lens camera. It really isn't, it's just a nice addition. I'm gonna leave this one here for today, guys. Be sure to like this video and I will see you in the next one.